Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name might be Isaiah and today is the rant of Vampire the Masquerade and why I hate it. Because I have very strong feelings about it despite the fact that I've never actually played the game. Not the video game, not the tabletop, and I have read none of the books. Well, incorrect. I have actually read through the tabletop books, both the original and the 20th anniversary edition, and it really didn't do itself any favors. Um, to start with, I need to explain how I got on the internet to begin with, and that was through DeviantArt because I wanted to post drawings. At the time, I was still tracing, but I was an idiot, and I was like, cool, I want to share my drawings, I want to share my stories, and DeviantArt seemed the place to go. And while I was on there, I discovered a sort of written roleplay community where people would pretend to be characters and talk as if they were those characters and then go into little chat rooms and just write out scenarios and scenes. And that became a really big part of my life. As I moved away from DeviantArt and onto Tumblr, I sought out the same thing, the same sort of groups. And that's where I first ran into the Vampire the Masquerade fandom. Um, to explain what Vampire the Masquerade is for people not in the know, it is a it was originally a tabletop game from White Wolf. It is part of a series. I get really confused about the names. I think it's Old World of Darkness now, or World of Darkness, or Chronicles of Darkness. I don't know. It gets complicated. I don't care. I really like the second edition of all the variations anyway. But it's part of a collection of tabletop games where you can have anything from ghosts to hunting magical creatures to being a changeling, mages, and of course, vampires. And Vampire the Masquerade was the most popular one out of this whole series. It has since spawned many books and a video game called Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines or Bloodlines Awakening, something like that. I I learned about the video game way after I was disenchanted with the whole VTM community. So I first ran into these people through Tumblr. And full disclosure, I am that 12-year-old edgy kid that, like, unironically loves Shadow the Hedgehog, vampires, all that sort of thing. I'm just really bad with ghost stories. To this day, I am still affected by some of my choices as a kid because I would steadily eat my steaks rarer and rarer in an attempt to get to more blood because I want it to be a vampire. And now I just like really bloody steaks, even though I now realize I cannot become a vampire. To this day, I still want to get a custom set of fangs. So I'm something else, I guess. But I really do love vampires, which makes it even stranger because when I ran into the Vampire the Masquerade community, I got really excited. There was this whole world of vampirism that I could just dig into. But I couldn't because VTM people are extremely gatekeepy. And this is why I dislike it. Vampire the Masquerade's tabletop is extremely lore heavy, extremely dense. I have tried to read through the book entirely through one go. I've tried to read it in chunks. It is extremely difficult to get through, especially if your opinion's already been colored by the community, like it was for me. So you can go into a VTM group and you can be like, oh, I want my vampire to be part of this clan, and I would like to do XYZ. And they will shut you down hard because if it doesn't follow the lore, they do not like it. It's part of why I find myself enjoying Vampire the Requiem better. It is the second edition to Vampire the Masquerade, and what it does is it strips out a lot of the inbuilt lore so that you can create your own more easily. It also takes out some of the worst vampire stereotypes. Like there's this whole family whose thing is like necrophilia and necromancy and all of this stuff. And for some reason, people really liked that family and they were so upset when they got taken out. And I don't get it. I thought the vampires that could like mold flesh into furniture and walls were cool, but no. Not the necromancy so much. They were different. And I just I discussed once about the run-in I had at a comic book shop where someone tried to tell me for 20 minutes how Vampire the Masquerade was better than Requiem for so long and had me trapped. And that also soured it. There's also LARPers, live action role players who do Vampire the Masquerade. It's a very dense, intense community, and they are not welcoming. In addition to all of that, I've also had bad experiences with individuals who would roleplay their VTM characters outside of the masquerade world, where I swear to God, I had a discussion that turned into an argument through a series of tags about A Clockwork Orange and the meaning of it. And it devolved to a point where a call out post was made about me by someone who role played a Nazi werewolf, um, just decrying all the bad deeds I've ever done. Luckily, they weren't familiar with my Homestuck days. I somehow managed to sneak that by everybody, but suffice to say, that incident ended up leading to my leaving the online roleplay community entirely because somehow, no matter what I did, I would keep running into the same people over and over. And after a while, it got from understanding why they were so angry with me and so hostile to I genuinely changed as a person and I was not being allowed to move on. So who knows? I don't care. They can have their own fucking world. I've grown and become a better person, and I'm pretty proud of that. But yeah, actual Vampire the Masquerade stuff. The book, like I've said, is so lore heavy, and Requiem really fixes that up. And in addition to that, Requiem, the second edition, makes it a lot easier for you to mix and match the different books together because second edition of everything is when my favorite book came out called Geist the Sin Eater. Geist the Sin Eater is actually about ghosts. People die and they are able to make a deal with a ghost to come back to life. And now they have powers and they can go fight other ghosts and all that sort of thing. It's so cool. I love it. And the book is so open ended. Admittedly, Geist the Sin Eater first edition did not have much in the way of actual enemies, so it was a little barren in that part. But you could pull from the other books much more easily, so long as you were doing the editions that came out with it. So Requiem, I think it was Mage the Awakening, or I'm pretty sure it was Awakening and not Ascension. One of the confusing things is they did have a tendency to name the first and second editions very close to each other. So instead of being able to say dot 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 second edition, you have to try and remember if it's like Awakening or Ascension. But regardless, it's really fun, and I have a story idea to put together with it at some point if I can ever have a steady group of tabletop players who are willing to experiment with a bunch of D10s instead of a D20 system. But that honestly, that's most of why I dislike Vampire the Masquerade so much. It's such a insular fandom. They're very hostile to changing the rules around, even if it may bring in some fresh ideas. The history and the lore is so dense. A lot of people will bring in information from the books or the video game that's not even in the primary textbook for the tabletop game. And then there's to end it, they have a tendency to leech into other White Wolf, or World of Darkness books and tags. So I got really into Geist the Sin Eater, like I mentioned, Sin Eater. Um, and I decided I wanted to see more content. I wanted to see other people's Geists. But When I looked into the different World of Darkness tags, all I could find were Vampire the Masquerade, Vampire the Masquerade. I couldn't find Requiem. I could barely find anything for Changeling. There was a smattering of things for Geist, but it was everywhere, all the time. It was just vampire, 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 vampire. And as someone who adores vampires, who grew up wanting to be a vampire, who changed their entire taste in how meat is cooked because they want it to be a vampire, I found myself hating vampires for the first time. And I didn't really get back into them until I discovered Curse of Strahd, which is a D&D tabletop, very famous from 2nd edition. It got imported to 5e. It still has some problematic elements, but you can see they try to fix some things up. But the way I like to play it, I try to completely remove like the Vistani's Romani heritage and that sort of thing. But that's going to be it for me. I really dislike Vampire the Masquerade, and I'm trying to cut down on the amount of repetition that I'm going with, because usually when I'm talking about it, I do not stop talking about it until I'm more or less forced to change the subject. And I mean, if you want people to get into your stuff, be open-ended. Let them ask questions. Don't tie yourself to the original lore, because that's just boring and stagnant. And what stories can you tell if everything's already written in the book? What's the point of having a tabletop game? Just write a book. All right, well, I'm done ranting now. I'm done. I will talk to y'all tomorrow. Stay hydrated. Bye. How many